I ignored the first message, thought it was just a mistake. But then they sent another, and somehow, they knew my name. You're listening to Dark Whispers, stories that feel too real to be fiction. It started with a simple text. "Hey, it's me. Are we still on for tonight?" I didn't recognize the number, so I ignored it. Probably just someone texting the wrong person. A minute later, another message popped up. "Come on, don't leave me hanging. You know I hate waiting." Something about that made me pause. It wasn't just the words, it was the familiarity in the tone, like they were sure I'd know who they were, but I didn't. I almost replied with a standard wrong number text, but before I could, a third message arrived. "You always do this, Daniel." I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I didn't recognize the number, but they knew my name. That alone was enough to make my stomach tighten. Maybe it was someone I'd met before, a coworker, an old friend. I scrolled up, checking to see if this was part of an old conversation thread. Nothing. Just a new number with no history. Before I could respond, another text appeared. I get it. You don't want to talk, but you could at least let me know you're okay." A weird unease crept up my spine. The phrasing, "let me know you're okay," felt off. Like they weren't just guessing I was ignoring them. Like they genuinely thought something had happened to me. I finally typed out a response. "I think you have the wrong number." I hesitated before hitting send, debating whether to ask, "Who is this?" But something told me not to. Maybe I didn't want to know. A few seconds later, 3 dots appeared, indicating they were typing. Then the response came. "Don't do that, Daniel." I swallowed. There was something strange about that message. Not an explanation, not an apology, just a warning. I started to type again, but another text popped up before I could finish. "You don't have to pretend. I know you're scared." I locked my phone and set it face down on the table. My heart was beating faster now, but I forced myself to breathe. It was probably just someone messing with me, a prank. That had to be it. Then, the next message came. "I know where you are." My first instinct was to brush it off. Some kind of prank, right? But before I could convince myself, another message appeared. "You're at home, aren't you?" Sitting at the table. Phone in front of you. A chill crawled up my arms. I turned my head slightly, scanning my apartment. My curtains were closed, my door locked. There was no way anyone could see me. I stood up, moving toward the window, and pulled the curtain aside just a crack. The street outside was quiet. No cars, no movement. Just the glow of the streetlights stretching shadows across the pavement. Then, another message. "Don't check the window." I froze. My fingers clenched around the curtain fabric. My pulse pounded in my ears. I hadn't told them I was checking the window. I let go of the curtain and backed away, my breath coming quicker now. Another message came. "I just wanted to talk, Daniel. But if you're going to act like this, fine. I'll come to you." I didn't move. My phone was still in my hand, the screen glowing in the dim room. My first thought was to call someone, maybe a friend, maybe the police. But what would I even say? Someone's texting me weird things? I swallowed hard and forced myself to think logically. It was just a message. A stupid prank. They didn't really know where I was. They were just guessing. Then my phone vibrated again. I'm almost there. A sharp knock echoed through my apartment. My body tensed. It wasn't loud, just a single deliberate tap 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 against the door. I turned my head slowly, staring at the entrance. My apartment building had security. Nobody could just come up unannounced. Another message. "Aren't you going to let me in?" A second knock, this time a little louder. I stepped back, gripping my phone like a lifeline. My mind was scrambling for explanations. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe it wasn't them at the door. Maybe. Another text? "You're breathing too fast, Daniel. Calm down." My breath hitched. My lungs were suddenly too tight. I turned, scanning the room, my eyes darting to every dark corner, every shadow. I wasn't crazy. I was alone. Another knock. More insistent this time. My phone buzzed again. Last chance. Open the door. I held my breath, pulse hammering in my throat. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I turned off my phone. The screen went black. The room was silent. I waited. 1 second. 2. 5. No more knocks. I didn't move for a long time. Eventually, I forced myself to check the peephole. My hands were shaking as I pressed my eye to the glass. The hallway was empty. I turned my phone back on. No new messages. The number was gone from my chat history, like it had never existed. I never got another text from them. But sometimes, when I check my window at night, I get the feeling someone's watching. And every now and then, I swear, I hear a knock. That was just the beginning. But what if the stranger wasn't just texting you? What if they had been there all along? Stay with me, because this next story is even more disturbing. It started when I was helping my mom clean out the attic. She was finally sorting through the old boxes of photos and keepsakes she'd been meaning to organize for years. I wasn't expecting to find anything interesting, just the usual childhood memories, school pictures, maybe a few embarrassing Halloween costumes. But then, I found the red shoebox. It was shoved toward the back, under a pile of old coats. The lid was dented, the edges frayed. When I pulled it out and flipped it open, a familiar scent hit me. Old paper, dust, something faintly metallic. Inside were dozens of photos, some Polaroids, some glossy 4x6s, even a few black and white ones that looked like they belonged to my grandparents. I started flipping through them, smiling at the memories. My 5th birthday, a trip to the beach, my first day of school. Some I didn't even remember. And then I saw him, a man, standing in the background of a photo from my 7th birthday party. He wasn't doing anything unusual, just standing near the fence, a little out of focus. Dressed in dark clothes, hands in his pockets, looking toward the camera. I didn't recognize him. I frowned and pulled out another picture. A different event. Christmas morning. I was sitting on the floor, grinning, unwrapping a gift. And in the background, there he was again. Same dark clothes, same hands in his pockets, same neutral expression. My stomach twisted. I pulled out another, then another. He was in all of them. At first, I thought maybe he was just a family friend, some distant relative I'd forgotten about. But the more I looked, the less sense it made, because something was changing. In the first few photos, he was just there, standing at a distance, blending into the background. But as I moved through the years, he started getting closer. In my 5th birthday photo, he was near the fence. In my Christmas morning picture, he was standing behind the couch. At my 8th grade graduation, he was near the food table, closer than ever. And then, I found the last photo. It wasn't a special event, just a random snapshot of me, sitting at the dining table, homework spread out in front of me. And the man, he wasn't in the background anymore. He was standing right behind me. I felt something cold settle in my chest. My fingers tightened around the photo. I turned to my mom, holding up the picture. "Who is this?" She squinted at it, then shrugged. "I don't know." I flipped through the others, laying them out in front of her. "He's in all of these." She frowned. "That's weird. Maybe he was a neighbor?" I watched her carefully, waiting for recognition to hit. But it never did. Then she laughed. "I think you're imagining things," she said, handing me the pictures back. "There's no one there." I stared at her. "There's no one there?" I repeated, my voice coming out tighter than I expected. She shook her head, still smiling a little, like I was playing some kind of joke. But her fingers were gripping the edge of the chair too tightly. I glanced down and saw the slight tension in her knuckles, the way her nails pressed into the fabric. She wasn't as relaxed as she was pretending to be. I swallowed and looked back at the photos. The man was right there, his dark clothes, his expressionless face, his presence. I flipped through them again, faster this time, holding them up for her. "Look, right here, at my birthday party, and here, at Christmas, and this one." I tapped the photo of me doing my homework, voice rising slightly. "He's standing right behind me. You really don't see him?" She let out a short breath. "Too sharp." Then she grabbed the nearest stack of photos and started sorting through them quickly, almost frantic. "I don't know what you're talking about," she muttered. "You're overthinking it." I wasn't overthinking it. I watched her flip through the pictures at a deliberate pace, too quick to actually be looking at them, like she was trying to get past them. She picked up the last photo, the one where he was right behind me, held it for a beat too long, then set it aside. Her shoulders relaxed, just slightly. She met my eyes again, her expression back to casual. See? Nothing weird. I looked down at the stack she had just sorted through. The last photo was gone. I reached for the pile, but she stood up quickly, brushing her hands on her jeans. Come on, we still have a lot to go through. I hesitated. My mouth opened, but I didn't know what to say. The photo was just gone, like she had never held it at all. I waited until she left the attic. Then, heart pounding, I got up and crossed the room. I grabbed the lid of the trash can and slowly lifted it. Inside, beneath a few crumpled napkins and scraps of old papers, it was there. I pulled it out, hands clammy, heart racing. My breath caught in my throat. Something was different. It was the same picture. Same setting. Same moment in time. But the man? He was standing right next to me. My stomach twisted. I dropped the photo like it had burned me, breath coming in short, uneven bursts. The paper was cold. Too cold. Like it had been sitting in a freezer instead of buried under napkins and papers. And the texture. I ran my thumb over the surface. It wasn't glossy. It was smooth, waxy, and thicker, like there was another layer underneath. My fingers trembled as I carefully peeled at the corner. The top layer lifted slightly, separating like old wallpaper. And beneath it, another image. The same scene, the same moment. But the man? He was even closer. I flipped the photo over, my breath shallow. The back was blank. But when I tilted it under the dim attic light, I saw them, faint indentations, a message that had nearly faded. I traced the grooves with my fingertips, my stomach twisting. And then, slowly, I read the words, "Do not show, Mom." My entire body went cold. A sharp knock on the attic door made me jump. My mom's voice drifted up from the hallway. "Ethan, everything okay up there?" I hesitated, shoving the photo into my pocket before standing up. "Yeah," I called back, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Just sorting through some stuff." She knocked again. "Find anything interesting?" The way she said it, too casual, made my stomach twist. I didn't answer right away. For the first time in my life, I didn't trust my own mother. I forced myself to step toward the attic door, my hands damp with sweat. I didn't know what I was going to say to her. I just knew I couldn't mention the photo. Why? What would she say if she saw it? Or worse, what would she do? I swallowed hard and opened the door. She was standing at the bottom of the attic stairs, looking up at me, smiling. But her expression, something about it didn't feel right. It was just a little too fixed, like she'd been waiting for me to come down. I hesitated. "Yeah," I said finally, forcing a weak smile. "Found some old stuff." She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. Her eyes flicked, just for a second, to my pocket. I kept my hand over it instinctively. The photo was still there. She noticed. Her smile didn't waver. "You should take a break," she said lightly. "Come downstairs, I made some tea." She turned before I could answer, disappearing down the hall. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding. I could hear her footsteps fading into the kitchen. Then, a rustle behind me. I spun around. The attic was silent, the boxes stacked exactly as they were before, but something in the air felt different. Heavy. Charged. I reached into my pocket, pulling the photo out again. My fingers were shaking as I flipped it over. The indentation on the back, the words, were still there. But there was something new. A second message, in the same faded scrawl. "She knows." I nearly dropped it. From downstairs, I heard my mom's voice. "Ethan?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the note, my breath shallow. Then, slowly, I turned the photo over. The man wasn't next to me anymore. He was gone. Would you notice if a stranger appeared in your old photos? Or worse, if they started getting closer? But some memories aren't just forgotten, they're erased. And our last story proves it. It happened last Thursday. I was walking home from work, earbuds in, barely paying attention. It was late, and the streets were mostly empty, just the occasional car passing by, headlights sweeping over the pavement. I was about to cross the street when I heard someone call my name. Not my actual name. An old name. A nickname I hadn't used in years. I stopped. My stomach tightened, and I pulled out one earbud, turning toward the voice. A man was standing a few feet away, near the entrance of a closed convenience store. Mid-40s, dressed casually, but something about him felt off. He smiled. "Been a long time, hasn't it?" I just stared, because I had no idea who he was. I forced a polite smile, the way you do when a stranger mistakes you for someone else. Sorry man. Think you've got the wrong person." His smile didn't falter. "No," he said simply. "I don't." That uneasy feeling in my stomach deepened. I took a step back, suddenly hyper-aware of how empty the street was. The distant hum of traffic, the faint flicker of a street lamp overhead, it all felt too still, like the city itself was waiting. "I don't know you," I said carefully. The man tilted his head, as if studying me. His gaze flicked over my face, my clothes, the way someone looks at an old friend who's changed too much. Then, finally, he sighed. "You really don't remember, do you?" I swallowed. "No, I don't." For the first time, his expression shifted. Not anger, not disappointment. Something closer to pity. He exhaled slowly, like someone who had just accepted bad news. "That's a shame," he murmured. I took another step back. This was wrong. All of it. The way he was talking to me, not like a stranger, not even like an old acquaintance, but like someone who knew me personally. Someone who expected me to know him too. And that name, that damn name, I hadn't used it in years. In fact, there were only a handful of people in my life who had ever called me that, most of them from an old online forum I used to be active on back in college. A stupid screen name. Something I'd chosen at random. I never used it in real life. I never told anyone outside that forum. So how the hell did this man know it? I swallowed, my mouth dry. "Who are you?" He smiled again. But this time, it didn't reach his eyes. "You'll figure it out," he said softly. "Soon." Then he turned and walked away. Just like that. No explanation. No second glance. I stood there, rooted in place, watching him disappear down the sidewalk. I wanted to call after him. I wanted to demand answers, but I couldn't seem to move. Because the second he was gone, something deep inside me shifted. Not a memory. Not exactly. Just a feeling. A vague, hollow sense of absence. Like I had just watched someone walk out of my life who had once been important. Very important. And the worst part? I couldn't remember why. I walked the rest of the way home, every step feeling off, like I was stepping into a place I didn't quite belong. My apartment looked the same. My keys fit the lock. But as I stepped inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I went straight to my laptop. The name he called me, it had to be from that old forum. That was the only place I had ever used it. I hadn't logged in for years, but I still remembered the site. It was one of those obscure message boards, long before social media took over. I typed the URL into the search bar, fingers tense. The page didn't load. I refreshed. Nothing. I tried again, searching for the forum on Google. No results. It was gone. Not just shut down, erased. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. That didn't make sense. Even dead websites leave some trace behind. A cached page, a mention in an old blog post. But there was nothing. Like it had never existed. A slow, creeping chill spread through my chest. I turned to my desk drawer, rummaging through old notebooks and papers until I found it. An ancient USB drive I hadn't touched in years. I plugged it in, clicked through the folders. And there it was. A saved text file labeled with my old username. I clicked it open. It was a chat log. Messages between me and a handful of other users. And then, a name I didn't recognize. Someone I had spoken to often. Someone I apparently knew well. Someone whose messages were all directed at me. I scrolled through, my breath catching as I read. "You won't forget, right? You'll remember me? Promise me." The final message was from me. Just one word. Promise. I stared at the screen. my vision blurring. I had no memory of this, no memory of them. And then, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Liar. I dropped my phone. My hands were clammy, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The text. Liar. It wasn't possible. I forced myself to pick up the phone, staring at the screen. No contact name. No profile picture. Just that single word, sitting there like a knife in my inbox. Then, 3 dots appeared. Typing. I watched. Heart pounding, as the response appeared. You said you wouldn't forget. A sick, twisting dread coiled in my stomach. I turned back to the computer screen. The old chat log was still open. A link. A private thread between me and this unknown user. The file was old, from years ago. But the link was still there. I clicked it. A web page opened. The forum was gone, erased from the internet. But this thread, it still existed. The screen flickered. A blank page, except for a single line of text. Welcome back. And below it, a list of usernames. Familiar ones. People I used to chat with. And all of them were marked inactive. Except mine. Mine was marked online. Then, my laptop screen flickered again. Another message appeared. Let's pick up where we left off. And then, I couldn't believe it when I heard it. A knock. Coming from the window. If you love realistic horror stories, hit like and subscribe. More unsettling tales are coming soon. You won't want to miss them.